Yeah, and welcome to another video. So this one is a treat. Got Jack in the house, Jack Ruch, just smooth as butter. I mean, bro, I listened to it like Paul Osama was talking about you, and I was like, yeah, check that. I mean, just the phrasing is so good.
Thanks, man.
But it looks like it's not intimidating. It just sounds good. It's like, oh, I could probably do that.
Yeah, it's not too complicated.
Yeah, and not the harmony and your note choice aspect of it. That's amazing, right? That takes, but like, you're just so chill about the whole thing. It's
just
awesome.
try to be relaxed.
Yeah,
and, let it flow.
Yeah. So I'm gonna leave his links down below. He's got an awesome Instagram feed, so make sure you check that out. And he also has a YouTube channel that maybe you're gonna post more stuff on.
I'm trying to get more stuff on there. Yeah.
So make sure you go to his channel and subscribe and click the bell for that. I will leave all his links down below. And he's also got a killer Patreon thing going on. So if you like all the solos, he's got tabs and jam tracks and
all
such.
that stuff.
So, killer jam track, kind of R&B-ish. What are our changes and what are we doing?
So it's like a blues in A, but kind of a Ray Charles style blues. So
what is that?
We're in A7. Okay. So still 1 to the 4 chord, like we would normally do in a blues. But then go into the sharp 4 diminished, which is also like a 1 diminished. You can look at it different ways, but that kind of move to get from the 4 chord back to the 1 chord. And then we do the 6-2-5 thing where we go F sharp 7, B minor 7, E7. But then this is kind of the different part where it goes down C sharp 7 to 3, which is kind of like the Ray Charles tune You Don't Know Me does that.
It's kind of like gospel vibe a little bit.
Very gospel. Yeah. It bridges the gap between the blues and the gospel thing.
Give them the progression. Just play it so they hear the whole thing in context.
Okay, so.
It's nice to be able to hear other chords.
Yeah.
I mean, I love blues, but like as I get older, I'm like my ears craving to hear something. More,
me too. Me too. You get used to playing over the 1-4-5, and then you're like, well, what else can I add in there to spice it up?
Yeah.
And finding songs like that. I mean, Ray's got a ton of great songs like that. But you'll hear stuff like Freddie King and B.B. King play over changes like that all the time. And a lot of times they do the pentatonic thing over it, and it works over that stuff really well. But then you can dig deeper inside the chords and kind of find the chord tones to each chord, and then little maneuvers and tricks you can use to move from one chord to the next. Yeah,
it was interesting when we were setting up. We were talking about yourself and Rob, but like Ray Charles's phrasing on the piano is
absolutely
killer if you translate it to guitar. I mean, it's just like
absolutely
beautiful. Piano players have a really good way of following the changes really well.
Well, it's all laid out there. It's all, it's really easy to see all those extensions, everything that's happening in the chord because of the nature of the instrument. So you just have to kind of map some of that stuff out on guitar to, get that happening.
So what's step one? What's like you're playing over those changes? Like what are you doing? Obviously, a lot of people are familiar with how to play a 1-4-5, but this particular song is in the key of
A.
Okay, and then the different chords that come in are what and where? You played it, but like...
Well, so it starts like a normal blues would. It goes 1, 4, 1, and then, back to the 4 chord. So all that's pretty straightforward. and you can play pentatonic type stuff, major, minor pentatonic type stuff, blues licks.
Yeah. What are you doing though?
Well, I'm doing a lot of that, but the one thing that I kind of do to go to the 4 chord that I did in that solo was do this kind of diminished trick where you're basically adding a note to the A7 chord to give it a little more tension so that it resolves. It just gives it another way to resolve to the D chord, the 4 chord.
Okay.
And all we're doing is adding what would be the flat 9 on top of the chord, the B flat. So that sound, which is kind of dissonant on its own. But when you hear like,
it wants to go somewhere.
Yeah, really want that half step wants to lead to the next chord. It wants to resolve. So all that is it would be, if you were looking at a chart, it would be A7 flat 9. That would be the chord.
Okay.
But when you play all those notes on top of an A chord, you get a diminished 7th chord. It's like a G diminished 7th over A.
Oh, okay.
So you can arpeggiate that chord.
All right.
And just play. Any of those, and then just resolve it to the D7. So right there, I'm playing. I'm building it off the B flat.
Right.
So the notes are B flat, C sharp, E, and G.
Okay.
So you can start on any of those notes. I can start on G, and then resolve down to D, which is the root of our D chord.
Okay, so play like the first chord. Show them, like, give them the tone of the chord, and then like what you would do over the chords, let's say.
So I'm playing along, playing blues licks in A.
Like, give an example. Okay.
Something like that. Mm-hmm. And then, so
that's walking into the 4 chord.
Yeah, I'm using the sound of these 4 notes to get to, ultimately I need to know the chord tones of my D7.
Yeah.
That's kind of an important first step, is just knowing all the notes of that chord, so you can resolve to it. So now I can play that G diminished right there. I could play, and I can start it off the B flat here, and I can go.
So where is that inside the actual? Is that if you were in a pentatonic?
Yeah.
That's
so if I'm playing
position
like
2, right? Here, tilt this way just a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. So if I'm playing major pentatonic or minor pentatonic, so all I'm seeing is if I know my A7 arpeggio, right?
Okay,
A7,
show 'em that.
A, C sharp, E, G, A, C sharp, E, G, A. That's all the notes of this chord.
Okay.
The root, the 3rd, 5th, flat 7th, root, 3rd, 5th, flat 7th, root. The diminished thing is B flat, C sharp, E, and G. So C sharp, E, and G are in both chords.
Yeah.
The 3rd, 5th, and flat 7th are the same. We're just moving the root up a half step.
Okay.
So that's the only note we're really kind of adding into this equation. So if you know how to get from there here to all the notes of the D7, then you can just think about this note and adding that in. So So there I'm starting on the 3rd of the chord, C sharp, E, G, and then B flat. So that's the note that's...
Oh, that sounds so good.
So yeah, so you can think of it a lot of different ways. You can think like, okay, I'm going to build a diminished arpeggio off of the 3rd of the chord, or the 5th of the chord, or the flat 7th of the chord.
What's like first approach? Like you're just starting it.
First approach, I would say, take your A chord here, and just play a diminished arpeggio a half step up, a diminished 7th arpeggio a half step up from this chord. So
interesting. Okay.
B flat, starting on B flat, and it's just a stack of minor thirds. You know, a diminished. You can just go. I mean, you can literally go.
Right.
You know, up 3 frets. There's
Yeah.
all your notes,
Yeah.
right? So it's just that. And so just play through that. That leaves you on G. Now you're heading to D. So you have to look at where your chord tones are for D. Okay, F sharp is the 3rd of that D chord. It's right there in the chord. If you can see the chord, you can see the notes right in it. And that will lead you right where you need to go. So
would it be maybe like, just for simplicity's sake, like a little pentatonic lick over the A chord?
yeah, something you could do.
Yeah.
Right, that, you know, that's where it falls. And
Yeah.
basically you're just altering that A chord to build a little extra tension and then resolve to the
Okay.
D chord. So-
What do you, when you get to the 4 chord, what's a process that you can go, like if you're just wanting to get away from just pentatonic playing?
Yeah,
a way to
well, I
kind
think
of-
about chord tones. I think about the notes in the chord and targeting those notes. And phrasing-wise, it's all about landing on those chord tones on the strong beats of the measure. And then in between that, you can play chromatic stuff. You can play things out of like a D7 scale, like a D Mixolydian scale. A lot of times I think about just targeting a few notes of the chord, and then I'm back into my pentatonic stuff. Because we
Yeah.
are playing a blues,
Yeah.
so like that A pentatonic stuff fits perfectly nice over all this.
Yeah.
But I just want to draw the listener in of like, okay, here's the chord change.
Yeah.
You know, a little bit. Just, you know, so I might do, you know, and then my diminished thing.
Yeah.
Right, so there's just the 3rd of the chord down to the flat 7th of the chord, and then that's it. I've outlined the chord. Now I can go back
Right.
to my pentatonic stuff.
What blues phrasing wise, who are some of your people you really like? If you're just talking strict like blues, if you were to had to pick 3.
Oh man, 3 is difficult. Albert King, B.B. King, Albert Collins for sure. Big time Albert Collins.
Awesome.
You know, Freddie
Okay, you
King,
get 2
Otis Rush, all of those guys. You know, all of
Right.
those guys. Buddy Guy,
Yeah.
early Buddy Guy. Yeah.
And
any
then
of
where
that
does
stuff.
the other than like Ray Charles that we mentioned before, guitar wise, what's a good person to start listening to hear those new kind of tones that are simple? That's not like some ripping shredder.
Well, a lot of jazz guys when they play blues do this kind of stuff. You know, if you listen to any of the great jazz, like Grant Green is a great example of a jazz guy who plays a lot of great blues stuff and kind of is accessible for like if you're a blues fan. I think Grant Green's a good place to start.
Interesting.
Really vibey.
Yeah.
But Wes does this kind of stuff. Joe Pass.
Yeah, but they're terrifying.
Yeah, well, it's a lot of layers to dig through.
Yeah,
you kind
right.
of have to like start listening to it and get used to it. But horn players do it a lot too.
Oh, dude, they have the best phrasing ever.
Yeah, and even like Fathead Newman, who played all the sax solos with Ray,
Okay.
is incredible.
Yeah.
His soloing and his diminished stuff, even on songs like Hallelujah, I Just Love Her So. It's like an 8-bar solo.
Yeah.
Super short, but outlining all the chords, beautiful little diminished passing phrases. It's all there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you get from all sorts of instruments. You take your favorite.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. Especially sax players, tenor and alto players. There's
Who are a couple of?
I love Cannonball Adderley and I love Charlie Parker.
Okay.
But there's tons.
Yeah.
And you just have to find. They all recorded blueses. You
Yeah.
know, especially like in the 40s and 50s, it was really common that everybody would do a blues on their jazz record.
Oh, for
you
sure,
know,
yeah.
And it would be kind of like this with some more changes thrown
Right.
in. But it's still a 12-bar form.
Mm-hmm.
And they're still always going to the 4 chord on bar 5.
Yeah.
You know, that's kind of the common thread.
Yeah,
so
right.
you can like hear, how are they doing that to get there?
Right.
And and you can kind of pick out some cool hip things. That's where this kind of stuff comes from.
Okay. So if you are, we got 1 to 4 and back to 1.
So back to 1, you can do a diminished thing too, but it would be instead of the B flat diminished thing, you can just play an A diminished
Okay, so
to
what's
get
an example
back.
of that?
So you'll hear this a lot of times where the chords will go A to D, and then when it's going back to the one chord, they'll do that little diminished passing chord to get back to the one chord. So that's that's an E flat diminished, but the diminished chords, because they're just stacked minor thirds, you can start them on any of the notes. They're kind of symmetrical that way.
Okay.
So I can start this same chord on A and play an A diminished. That's the same as,
Right.
like those are all inversions of the same notes, right? So I can start it anywhere. So just for visual sake of kind of sticking in this box and going, okay, we're going to add this to our pentatonic stuff that we're comfortable with, you can just play an A diminished right here off of this A, and then play C, E flat, and then F sharp. So
I see what you're saying.
which is pretty close to,
Yeah.
so that would be, we're going there's our B flat diminished to get to D. Now we're going D. Right. So it's these two little diminished arpeggios, and they're just a half step apart. You just got to think B flat to get to the 4 chord, and A diminished to get back to the 1 chord.
Nice.
So it can be as simple as that, and you can, once you get like a certain lick down or a certain position down, then you can start moving it around, because all these things move in minor thirds. So I can play my B flat. I can move that up to like C sharp and play.
Same shape.
Same exact.
Yeah.
But now I'm thinking a different position for D, so I've got to resolve it in a different way. I got to know those chord tones.
Yeah.
And how to get out of it. That's the trick with this thing.
Right.
It's not so much playing the diminished thing, it's sticking the landing.
Exactly.
Because you can easily it can run away from you, and you're like, oh, wait a minute, where am I?
Outside jazz.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, something. And then, back to the, so yeah, taking it a little bit at a time and then moving it around through different positions. But yeah, it's actually pretty simple. It's more simple than I think it sounds.
Yeah. If people start hearing other chord names and they get scared.
Yeah, well, you start throwing out flat nines and stuff, and people get freaked out.
So good, what's that?
But I think of like the chord, you have to kind of understand what the underlying chord is, so you understand the harmony behind it. Not to get too deep into theory and stuff, but you want to understand like the chord recipes and what's happening in the music. But then you can use these, if you understand that like, oh, well, that's the same as a diminished shape. It's kind of like a hack of like, oh, okay, I know some diminished stuff. Let's move that around.
Yeah.
But you kind of have to understand like why it works for it to really start clicking. Like it works because it's the notes of A7 with a flat 9, and that flat 9 wants to resolve. All right.
Now that there's caffeine in the system, time to hit those other chords.
All right.
Where are we at?
So yeah, we're getting into the 6-2-5 part of the progression, which is a very common sort of alteration on like a 12-bar blues that would be 1-4-5.
Okay.
So instead of 2 bars of A7 and then a bar of E7 and a bar of D7, like your traditional 1-4-5 blues, we're going to go up and do this. The chords would be the 6 dominant chord, the 2 minor chord, and the 5 dominant chord. So from A7, F sharp 7, B minor 7, E7. And you hear that all the time.
Yeah, totally.
Jazz, blues type things. So you can outline all those chords with arpeggios, with knowing the chord tones. Right.
Okay, what's that?
That's F sharp 7 arpeggio.
Okay.
Right? So all the notes of that chord.
Yep.
Right, and then going to a B minor 7. So, right, all those notes. So I would play things like, simple. That's all just playing inside the chords, not really anything, too outside. It's just playing within the notes of the chords. Now, so in that spot, that F sharp 7 moving to B minor 7, that has a relationship, right? If you were to look at this as like the key of B minor, F sharp 7 would be your 5 chord. So that's what's called a functioning 5 chord. Okay. It's that chord move is a 5 to 1. It's not the 5 chord of the progression we're in because we're in the key of A. It's the 6 chord going to the 2 chord. But it's functioning harmonically in the same way. It's the same cadence. Okay. Like that chord moving to that chord. So when you have these little tools you can use to get from one chord to the next, like the diminished thing, you can find other places that type of chord movement happens and use the same ideas. Okay. So A7 going to D is also a 5 to 1. If you were to look at this in the key of D, A7's the 5 chord. Yeah. So we use this diminished thing, adding that altered note on there to resolve to D, so we can do that same thing right here. We can go from the third of the chord just like this. There's the third of the A chord going to the D chord. We can go right here from the third of the F chord, or F sharp chord rather, and we can go up a diminished arpeggio. And then find our chord tone of B minor. So I think that's kind of what I played in the solo, right? And that's a great line. So now you're in A. Right? We've just kind of woven these chords together. By using chord tones basically, but also adding in that spicy little flat 9 thing. So continuing on, we have we go to E7 next, which normally in a blues it would go F sharp, B minor, E7, back to the 1. That's the 6-2-5-1 turnaround. Okay. So you can do that same thing. E7 going to A7 is a 5 to 1. So we can do. It's the same thing. Right, we can move that around anywhere. So that's the diminished thing is, building a diminished arpeggio off the third, the fifth, the flat 7th, or the flat 9, a half step above the root. Okay. Off of any chord that's like functioning as a dominant 5 chord. Okay, so run through that one more time, so like in application, so people see it. So. Yeah, the trick is you have to understand a little bit of chord harmony, how chords function. Okay, so explain what you mean by that. Like what? So, you can even just visually look at it on the guitar neck. Like if you're in B minor and you were to play a B minor blues, there would be your 4 chord, there would be your 5 chord, right? You can see that relationship. So, okay, now we're in A, but we're playing those same chords, the 6 chord to the 2 chord. See that same relationship between chords. So right there you can recognize, okay, that's functioning as a 5 chord moving to that B minor chord. Okay. So I know I can do that diminished thing over that 5 chords. Okay. So let's throw it in there. So I go to the third of the chord, I can go to the flat 7th of the chord, or the 5th of the chord, the flat 7th of the chord, or the flat 9. And I can build it off of any of those notes. Right here I'm going to the third. And I'm resolving down to a note of the B minor chord. So you have to know those chords. It's all about knowing where you're going. Sure. and kind of having, these are just like little paths to get through these chords. But you have to work out like how you're going to resolve it and where you get to. So that can be stuff you can practice. I practice this stuff all the time, moving it around and going, oh, okay, that can resolve to here. And you kind of work out. It's almost more like maneuvers rather than licks. Yeah. It's like, oh, that's my move to get to that chord tone.
Yeah, they're like transitions.
Yeah, and then that can be kind of go in your vocabulary of, okay, I can move that way to get there.
Yeah. So you teach privately too, right?
I do, yeah.
Make sure to hit him up because it's worth it. I'm about to do the same.
Yeah, man. Get into all this stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So any last? Let's do this. What is a good place to? Obviously, you have lessons. I'm sorry. Is there someplace you found that makes what you're talking about simple, like as far as learning like the chords and intervals and all that stuff, so they can visualize this stuff better? Obviously, you can watch the video, but like, is there something that kind of like did it for you, where it was like,
well, it was a combination of things. I mean, it's building upon like more simple things, basic theory. I think the first thing I ever learned, like to understand chord harmony, was just diatonic chords, like harmonizing a major scale and going, okay, there's the 1 major, the 2 minor, the 3 minor. So like if you played C and you just took the notes of a C major scale and just using those notes built triads out of each note.
Tell them how you do that.
Well,
if they're made just regular chords.
So yeah, it's just C, D, E, F, G, A, B. It's all the white keys on the piano, right? So we're just going to start on the first note, C, and build a triad using just those notes. So it would be C, E, and G.
Yeah.
We're
skip
going
over
up
one.
Yeah, we're skipping one. We're going to root, third, fifth.
Yeah.
So yeah, it would be like every other white key on the piano when you put your fingers down like that.
Yeah, and that's how you build all chords if you don't know that. So like that scale he played, you basically take that C and you skip over the next degree, and then you skip over the next degree.
Yes, exactly.
And all of the chords are built that way. And then you would start with the next note, like the D, and then you skip and do that same process.
Yeah, and you wind up with this cycle of chords: D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, B diminished. So that's diatonic harmony. Those chords are all diatonic to C major.
Yeah.
So and that's a million songs. So if you're playing a song that has those chords, okay, I can make melodies out of a C major scale over all those chords.
Yeah.
And that was kind of step one for me. And then you understand if you understand that, you go, okay, that's sort of like basic ground zero, how chords work. Then you start to learn songs and you notice things where they're breaking the rules.
Yeah.
Like, oh, they're going to the flat 7 major from a major chord. Or they're going,
what does that sound like?
Like from C major.
Yeah.
Yeah, or going up to the flat 3rd, which is just borrowing chords that aren't diatonic to C major. And then when you get into blues and this type of blues stuff, gospel-y, jazzy type blues stuff, you find a lot of secondary dominant chords.
Okay.
Where they're taking like a chord that would normally be a minor chord but making it a dominant chord.
Yeah.
And that's like,
what's that sound like?
So if you go to C and if you went up to like E minor, would be your regular minor 3 chord, but you'll hear that kind of thing leading. So you hear that all the time.
Do they transition back to the diatonic chords, or is that just like one substitution of a chord?
Yeah, well, a lot of times what that is like I was talking about functioning dominant 5 chords. The reason they make those chords dominant is because it leads to the next chord. It pulls your ear in. Yeah. So you'll hear things like C major, say it's C major, E minor to A minor, right? That's all within the C major scale. When you add that when you raise the third on the E7 chord, make it an E dominant 7, it just builds a little more tension going to that A minor because it's now functioning as a dominant 5 chord that's resolving to A minor.
Okay.
So C,
Yeah.
right, because that note is a half step away from A, so it's
screaming to go somewhere.
yeah, exactly. And so when you start to recognize that, oh, that's kind of breaking the rule of diatonic chords,
Yeah.
you can start to pick out what those notes are, and then you can start adding more extensions to it. Like I can take that flat 9 thing,
Right.
I can go C, right?
Ooh, yeah.
Right, there's E7 flat 9, which, yeah, so. Right, things like that where, and that's the stuff piano players are playing all the time.
Yeah.
That's what Ray's doing all the time. Because, you listen to those Ray Charles songs, there's secondary dominants all the time, and it's almost like, it's like kind of little melodies within the chords that are voice leading and pulling your ear to the sound of the next chord.
Yeah. Dude, you realize if you teach this stuff, people are gonna eat it up.
Yeah, hopefully, yeah. I mean,
it's I always love having players come over that can clearly explain what they're doing, because a lot of people they just hear it, and then there's players that can do both. They can hear it and explain it. That's a talent.
Yeah, that's kind of, I've learned a lot of that from teaching, actually.
Yeah.
Like stuff that I've just played forever and go, well, I have to explain this to a variety of people, and everybody learns differently.
For sure. That's
but
amazing.
So you just start elaborating on it. But being kind of aware of how chords lead to one another, and that's not really that complicated. You're just, if you're aware of what the diatonic chords are, and then you see one that stands out that's a little bit different.
Yeah.
Also, like, that'll help you with your soloing too, because if I'm playing that chord progression, C major, E7 to A minor, I know I can play C major over the C chord and over the A minor chord.
Okay.
Because they're both diatonic and they're relative.
Both
I can play the C major pentatonic, which is the same as the A minor pentatonic. But as soon as I see that E7, I go, okay, well, that note, that G sharp, that sticks out. That's not in the C major. So maybe I want to target that in what I'm playing. So even if I'm playing something really simple, a simple line like that where I'm just landing on that note,
Bro, you are one of the smoothest guitar players I've ever heard in my life. It just feel. That's awesome.
All right, so that's real simple outlining of a chord. Here's major pentatonic, C major pentatonic. There's that note.
Yeah.
And then there's a root of our A minor chord, right? And that could be a great way to play a solo over that. All right, something.
Yeah. Dude, that's amazing. So, okay, let me get this straight, and we'll close this one up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Instagram, your Patreon, you have that stuff tabbed out?
Patreon, I have some of my solos tabbed out, and I kind of just do it, whatever I think people are going to benefit from.
Yeah.
So I have a few on there that are kind of these gospel-y type things that people can dig into. And then I have some long-form video lessons up there where I talk about the diminished stuff or arpeggios, and kind of really go through it very thoroughly. Yeah. Like, okay, here's how you map out the 3 chords of a 1-4-5. Yeah. In each position. And then I have the diagrams of the arpeggios up there, so people can kind of work on it on their own. And it kind of goes with the private lessons too.
Yeah.
You know, it's just
You got to do your homework.
yeah. I mean, a lot of this stuff is stuff that you just have to sit down and work through, you know, finding these notes that are in every chord. You can, you know, when I practice this stuff, man, it was like 10 minutes at the beginning of the day. I would just go through this stuff.
Yeah.
Until my brain turned off and I couldn't retain it anymore. But slowly that builds up, and then you're, you know, then you move on to more difficult things.
Sure.
That, like these types of progressions, it's like once you get the 1-4-5, you go, okay, well, let me add the 6-2-5-1 thing in there. And that'll take a little while to move around everywhere.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you mess around with the diminished stuff and start adding it in. Yeah.
Nice. Well, hopefully you'll come back, see us again.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Awesome.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah, make sure to check his links down below. And again, check out his Patreon. Also, if you're interested in privates, let him know. And then he also has a YouTube channel, so check that out as well. That would be awesome. And if you're new here, welcome. Make sure to subscribe, click the bell. Also down in the description box is brettpapa.com. That funds all of this stuff that you see here, including fellas like yourself over here. So that would be awesome. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for checking it out. We'll catch you next time.